Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily video update for June 14th, 2024. Today's Friday, so I'm going to take your questions, and I have several questions that were emailed that I think get to the fundamental concern of many of you out there, which is how are we going to make the transition from an endless war posture with an economy to support that, which means looting against the population, to an era of peace and sustainable economic development. So here are the questions that were emailed to me that I'm going to be answering. How should I think about the coming period? I'm scared about the danger of nuclear war, but more afraid that so few are aware of this. What can we do? And a second email, you talk about a period of transition, but wars and killing continue. How does talking about it change things? Now, what I would suggest to you is that the important question is how to change the dynamic, how to make a cognitive leap, as Mrs. Zepp-LaRouche has been stressing, from acceptance of submission as a victim to an unjust, unfair system, to actually functioning as a citizen with a say in the process, a citizen who can help determine what should the national mission be to improve the conditions of life, not just for all Americans, but for all people. Because in fact, the American economy, if it's functioning properly, can do that. So we have to start with what is the crisis? What is the actual nature of the crisis? And it's the breakdown of the transatlantic system. The fact that the post-Soviet era economy no longer functions, that an imperial system no longer is acceptable to the people in the neo-colonial world who are oppressed by it, nor is it acceptable to the people of the West. What we've seen is since 1991 is the emergence of what is called the sole hegemon, the sole superpower, the unipolar order, or the so-called rules-based order. But it's based on a fake binary choice, the idea that either you have democracy or autocracy. And of course, the West, with its censorship and everything else, is not really a democracy right now. And so we have a false choice. The endless war faction is trying to sustain itself not just through fighting wars, but through something called hybrid warfare. And I'll be giving a talk on Sunday afternoon at the Schiller Institute conference on what is the nature of hybrid warfare. How are you being brainwashed to accept these fake choices? Now we have lies, for example, about the Russian special military operation from February 2022 being unprovoked, when in fact it was provoked by the previous 8 years of lies and warfare against the people of the Donbass region. We're told that the Gaza crisis started on October 7th, when in fact the occupation has continued for many, many years, since 1967. How does the West react to this, to the current crisis? Well, you have the G7 meeting with new sanctions issued against Russia. You have the commitment to send more money and more weapons to Ukraine. You have nonstop military exercises. You have attacks now from Ukraine into Russia with weapons provided by the West, by NATO. You have a NATO summit coming up, a war gathering on July 9th. There's talk of escalating trade war against China, the continued flow of arms and money to Israel, and the torrent of censorship, or I should say torrent of lies, backed by censorship in the West. That's the endless warfare faction. That's their policy. Now, the future, the shift from that is how do we get to a new security and economic development architecture? And we see that with the series of conferences being held to counter the NATO war drive. The St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, which just concluded, involved a consolidation and expansion of the BRICS. They're now talking about almost 50 nations that want to be part of the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Eurasian Economic Council. This includes the extension of the Belt and Road Initiative from China into Asia, into Southwest Asia, into Africa, into South America. It could also include that into Europe, if the Europeans would break with their subservience to the NATO City of London policy. So the motion in this direction is unstoppable. The nations of the global South will not accept colonial status anymore. So why should we in the global North accept the idea that we're victims, that there's nothing we can do, that the odds are stacked against us? They have all the power and we have nothing. We just have to figure out how to scrape by and get the best that we can. You might say a bigger piece of a shrinking pie. But that's the law of the jungle. That's the Hobbesian universe of the British Empire. Instead, the American system was based on the idea that you can expand the pie to allow more people to benefit from the fruits of technological advance and increase in productivity. That's what we've lost. That's gone in this system today. Now, the question then is, can we move citizens in Europe and the United States to recognize the threat of endless wars? And by the way, the end could be a nuclear World War III. But how do we do this? Well, the press conference that we had, the emergency press conference of Wednesday, was a very good start. You had veterans and intelligence officials who spoke with Helga Zepp-LaRouche about how we can move beyond the immediate situation of endless warfare. What's the key to this, though? It's recognizing the real nature of man, that we're a creative being. We're moved by ideas, and among those ideas are a love of truth and a love of our fellow human beings. That's how we can have the strength to mobilize, to recognize that we're not animals fighting over a shrinking pie, but that human beings can use their creative power to increase the capability to transform nature, to develop new raw materials, so to speak, so there'll never be an insufficient amount of capability to expand. But importantly, that expansion is based on pursuit of truth, the idea that you can master the principles of the universe and use them in your technological advances, not to make smaller and smaller computers, but to increase the capability of man through his productive powers. And the chief among these is creativity. So the idea then is that you unlock the future by building an educational and cultural capability to provide each child with the sense of their own potentially infinite power. And that's what it means to be created in the image and likeness of God. Not that we are gods, but that we possess the capability to improve the circumstances for all mankind. And that's what the expression of love means. And without that, religions just become cults. So what I'm providing for you today will be links to the emergency press conference from Wednesday, a link as well to the weekly dialogue I did with Helga Zepp-LaRouche yesterday, and a link to our conference, the Schiller Institute conference for this Saturday and Sunday, on how to carry out this transition from a strategic standpoint, a scientific standpoint, and a cultural standpoint. Now, one bit of good news I can report to you: even the brain-dead Congress is being forced to act. There's motion now against NATO's Ukrainian hit lists in the US Congress. And on those hit lists are people such as Scott Ritter, but also the newest list, the Texty list, includes Diane Sayre and myself. The fact that the Congress is taking this up now, after months of doing nothing, is an indication that the battle can be won. But it means you have to join the battle. So I thank you for your questions. I hope this gives you some ideas. But most importantly, take advantage of the links in the description box to prepare yourself to function as a warrior angel on behalf of truth and love. So hopefully I'll see you this weekend at our conference.